কথা শুনতে পাচ্ছো?
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম, শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
হুম, স্ক্রিন দেখা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম, দেখা যাচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা। So we were discussing construction of synchronous machine last day. So let me just recapitulate what we have done. Now, synchronous. We have seen that for rotating machine, these are the four possible construction what we can have. That is, first option is that we can have our armature on the stator and field on the rotor, and we can the field construction, the rotor construction can be either circular, in or it can be salient pole type. So this is one. This is two option. That is, we have armature on the stator, field on the rotor. Here rotor is cylindrical. Here it is salient pole. And other option is we can place the field on the stator and the armature on the rotor. And again, the rotor can be either cylindrical, and the stator, here field winding we have to put the where the that stator construction for the field can be salient pole. Now, among these four, we have seen that when we are designing a DC machine, we have to opt for this construction, because in DC machine, what we require is that the EMF which is induced, we know that is always will be alternating in nature, should be rectified, and we should get a DC output, and that is only possible if we have a commutator and brush assembly, because that acts as a mechanical rectifier and rectifies the alternating voltage to DC. So for DC, we have to go for these options. For AC, that is for alternators, first thing we have to decide whether we must put our field on the rotor or on the stator. Now we have seen that putting the field on the rotor has certain advantages, because rotor is a low power circuit, low voltage, low current. So, and the armature circuit is a high power circuit, high voltage, high current. Now the winding which we put on the rotor will be subjected to mechanical vibration and centrifugal stress, because it is rotating, and it is also difficult to insulate a rotating winding for a very high voltage. So if we put our armature on the rotor, automatically this will put some limitation on the voltage rating of the armature coil. And from the current rating point of view, as the current rating increases, the copper content of the winding will increase, because we will have thicker copper sections. So that will make the weight of the winding bulky. So that will make the rotor bulky. So that puts a mechanical limitation on the rotor size. So if we put the armature on the if we put the armature on the rotor, automatically some limitations are imposed on it, uh, primarily because from mechanical point of view, and that will limit the size, that is the rating, voltage and current rating. So that machine is expressed in MVA, so MVA rating is limited. So on the other hand, if we put the armature on the stator and field on the rotor, that limitation is not there, because field is a low power circuit. An advantage is that armature is now is a static winding, and it is much more easier to insulate it properly, and also it is easier to cool a static winding than a rotating winding. So unless it is otherwise required, in some specific cases we might require to put the armature on the rotor. Normally all the machines which are used for power generations will have their armature on the stator and field on the rotor. So now we have two options, these two are left. So here which one has to be followed? Now actually the speed of the, we have seen that the other day that the number of poles, the number of poles required depend on the speed of the prime mover, because the bus frequency is constant. So we, whatever we, whenever we generate the voltage, we want the frequency to be constant, and this frequency, generated frequency, is related to the speed of the prime mover. So we have seen that if the prime mover speed is high, we require a smaller number of poles, and if the prime mover speed is low, we require a larger number of poles to have the same frequency. Now we have mainly basically two type of prime mover, that is the steam turbine and the water turbines. So steam turbines are used with thermal power plants and also with nuclear power plants. These are high speed devices, so they will require smaller number of poles. Now when the number of pole is small, it is more practicable to go for this cylindrical rotor construction. Now the reasons is that because it is not impossible to build a, say, a machine with salient pole construction for 2-pole or 4-pole, but it is that as the rotor is rotating at a high speed, the windage loss will be high, and due to the rotor is subjected to too much vibration because of this projected structure, there will be too much noise, and it is mechanically weak. But on the other hand, if we go for the cylindrical rotor construction, it is a smooth structure, so when it is rotating at a high speed, the windage loss and the noise, that will be less compared to that salient pole structure. So for turbo alternators used with thermal power plants, we will go for cylindrical rotor construction. This cylindrical rotor construction typically have 2 or 4 number of poles, might be maximum 6, not more than that. Now when we go for the hydel power stations, we have the water turbines, which are slow moving devices, and the speed depends on the height of the waterfall. Now here we require large number of poles. When we require large number of poles, then we have to go for the salient pole construction, because just from common sense you can see that from cylindrical rotor, how we make the poles. That is, this is the cylindrical rotor for 2 poles. That is, we will have slots, and this will be because we require prominent poles. Now this is for 4 poles. Now might be we can have 6, but if the number of poles is more than that, then it is difficult to have this type of well-defined poles like this on a cylindrical rotor construction. So we will prefer we opt for the rather this salient pole construction, where we can have large number of poles, which has projected poles like this. So either we go for cylindrical rotor or salient construction, but always we will have the armature on the stator and field on the rotor. Now from the point, as this is typical stator structure, as we have alternating flux. So there will be eddy current and hysteresis losses. To limit that, the stator structure is laminated. So the stator is the typical stator lamination will look like this. These are the stator slots. This is stator core, and here you can see these notches through the, because this is a AC machine, so we will have a frame outside. So this lamination are assembled together to form a structure like this. So there will be a keyhole. So key is inserted here to attach the structure to the stator frame. So the stator is laminated, and this is a typical figure for stator with windings, and you can see you have seen that how large it is because the man is sitting. For the rotor, for cylindrical rotor, this will have this shape. Now actually that slots will be quite deep because the slots are limited over this region. So, and the field number of turns will be high, so the slots will be quite deep. Now theoretically, as rotor has DC, so it need not be laminated, but it is not practicable to make a large solid structure. So rotor is normally made up of thick uh, fabricated disc of steel which are assembled together form a structure like this. But here you can typically see that there is no shaft hole. Normally when you see the rotor stamping of any, say, induction motor, we have a shaft hole, but here there is no shaft hole, because if we bore a shaft hole here and these slots are very deep, so the material between the shaft hole and the slot base is very small. And this say for this two pole machine, it is rotating at 3000 rpm for 50 hertz. So it becomes there is probability of mechanical fault developing in this region. So there is no shaft hole, so all these thick discs are assembled to form this structure, and the shaft is in two piece, which is attached to this structure from both sides. So it has some elaborate mechanical arrangement, but to which we are not going into details. So this is a typical cylindrical rotor structure. Now, for any rotating machine, the output, when you go for the machine design, you will see the output. That is what amount of power we can draw from a particular frame size. That depends on the D square L product, where D is this air gap diameter or the armature this rotor diameter, and L is the armature length. Now, so for a particular output, we have two options. If D is large, L will be small. If D is small, L will be large. Now, for cylindrical rotor machine, as it is, we know that if we make the diameter large, then on the rotor surface, the conductors will be subjected to high centrifugal stress, because centrifugal stress will be proportional to that, will increase as the diameter increases. So we opt for a smaller diameter. So as the diameter is small, the length will be large. So the length of the rotor is large. Making the length large has also many problems, because making the length large and diameter small, then the available area on the surface for cooling, it reduces, and it is very difficult to pull the long rotor, because we normally the air is inserted through the air gap from one end and it is taken out from the other end, and there are paths to guide the air. You can see this is the ducts through which the air will pass. So it is in the middle there will be hot spot developing, so it is very difficult to cool it. It requires special cooling. On the other hand, if we go for the salient pole machine, again d square L product power depends on d square L product. If you go for it is running at a lower speed, so there is no problem of that centrifugal stress. And on the other hand, as we have to provide this projected number of large number of poles, so it is obvious that the diameter should be large. Otherwise, we to have this large circumference to attach this pole, so it will have large D. So automatically, the length will be small. Now here also it is the excitation is DC. There is no need to laminate the rotor structure, but from constructional point of view, these poles pieces are separated, attached to the spider. Now from constructional point of view, it is easier to have a laminated pole. So poles are laminated. This will be typical pole lamination, which are assembled together and bolted to make the pole structure, and which is attached to the spider by this key key with this by this key to this structure, you can see. And here we have the shaft hole, because that problem of this mechanical problem is not here there. And here as the length of the shaft length of the armature is small, cooling is not that a problem. Simple air cooling with fans can serve our purpose. This is a typical rotor of a salient pole machine. You can see how large it is. It is almost of the height of the man. So typically for same rating, a cylindrical rotor will be look like this, and the salient pole machine rotor will look like this, almost like a disc. Now next important things for another construction is that first of all we have to see that insulation is very important before going to cooling, because both the armature and the field windings has to be insulated. Now as I have told that these machines are very large rating, and voltage rating is of the armature is very high, in the range of kV, so it has to be insulated properly. Now insulation, there the large amount of materials used for insulation are organic, like vulcanized fiber, horn fiber, fish paper, different types of cambrics, vulcanized varnished cambrics, papers, etc. Now different type of insulation can withstand different temperature. And one of the insulation widely used which can withstand very high temperature is mica. I am not talking about there are some organic bonding materials now available, but widely what is used is mica. Now it can withstand very high temperature, but the main problem with mica is that it is brittle and its mechanical property is not very good. So for say when we go for the slots, say within the slots, go for within the slots, then what is the within the slot, what is the insulation? First of all, we should have a insulation layer like this, that is the slot lining. Okay. Just in case of DC machine also we had the slot lining, then we have the insulated conductor placed inside the slot. Now for with mica it is very difficult to make the slot lining because mica is brittle. So what is done, my thin strips of mica is taken, which is bonded by some epoxy bonding so that a mica sheet is made with strips of mica, and that is flexible and that is used to make the slot lining. And the conductor within the straight portion of the conductor within the slot is normally insulated by mica at high temperature, and this mica, it is rolled hot, where generally mica insulation is applied and rolled hot on the straight portion of the conductor. And for the conductor outside this portion, that is this portion, that end winding portion, it can be also insulated by normal insulation what is available for that temperature range. So particularly for this cylindrical rotor machine, typically mica insulation is used. Now for the field, field circuit is a low power circuit, normally 125 volt to 250 volt, my maximum 500 volt is the voltage rating. So insulation is not that a problem from the voltage point of view, but the fact is that particularly for the cylindrical rotor machine, as the field placed on the rotor, they are subjected to very high temperature because it is very difficult to cool the rotating winding. So temperature rise will be high, and when you go for faults, you will see that during fault condition, initially for first 1 or 2 half cycles, the voltage across the field winding can be quite high. So actually the field winding has to be insulated for that high voltage. So here also normally mica is used for field insulation. But when we go for the salient pole machine, the stator winding is normally what how we will have mica insulator. But for the rotor winding, the stress is not that great, temperature rise is also not that large, so we can have other type of fiber insulation also, that is sufficient for mica is not required. And the cylindrical rotor machine, the field windings also, they are subjected to mechanical stress because of the high speed. So that is also, that insulation properties deteriorate with mechanical vibration. So that's why also insulating the cylindrical rotor field, we go for mica insulation, though the voltage is not that high. Now next important is the cooling, particularly for the cylindrical rotor machine. As I have told that the due to the large length of the armature, it is very difficult to cool the machine because of this large length. So it requires very special arrangement for cooling. Now for cooling, basically when we design the cooling system, basically main important points what is considered is the total loss to be what is to be dissipated, because that will result in temperature rise. Then the surface exposed for dissipating that loss, and the quantity of air which is required, and the temperature of the cooling air. Now that heat is taken away by the air from the machine, and how much heat is conducted, that will depend upon the temperature difference between the air, cooling air, and the hot machine. Now what happens if the cooling air quantity is too small? Very quickly the cooling air will attain a high temperature, so there will be no cooling further. Now if we go on increasing the amount of air, there will be at particular volume of air, there will be a steady there will be a very after a certain time there will be very small temperature difference between the cooling air and the hot machine, and there will be no further uh, cooling. Now if we go on adding the amount of cooling air, we really do not have any advantage for increasing the amount of air. There is an optimum volume of air which is required. So that has to be considered. Now here you can see this is just a schematic. This is basically the machine, and this total whole system includes that cooling. So basically now the here also cooling the slow speed generator, that is the salient pole machine, is not a problem. So it can be cooled with proper with sufficient quantity of air, with fans to circulate the cooling air. The cooling can be handled because the length of the armature is not that high. But in case of turbo alternator, what happens? The power output per unit volume, that quantity is high, and the surface area available for dissipating that high loss, that due to this high rating, is not sufficient. So forced ventilation must be there. So unless the machine is very large, we can go for air cooling, but there is a forced ventilation, totally enclosed forced ventilation. Now for ventilation we can have mainly three types of arrangement. One is radial ventilation, one is circumferential, sorry, circumferential ventilation, other is the axial ventilation. For radial ventilation, air is let into the machine through the air gap between the rotor and the stator, and then it is directed through this radial ventilating duct, and again this is circulated and is let out of the, so out of the total system by some with through some outlet. Normally both from both sides the air is let in, and this one is for a salient pole machine. Similarly, say this is for a turbo alternator. This length is large, so on from both sides the air is let into the air gap from both sides, and in both in the rotor and the stator there will be radial duct. Now there should be duct for air circulation. Now duct can be radial and or axial. For radial duct is created by placing spacers between the lamination. That is, if we go to the previous figure, what we have, this was the lamination. So when we arrange the lamination between two lamination, if we put a spacer, so that will create a gap. So that will create a gap, and this thorough gap that will create a radial duct. That is, duct is along the radial, and for the axial duct, axial duct, there will be holes in the stator core. There will be holes in the stator core, and when we assemble all the laminations, there will be a duct created throughout the length parallel to the shaft. That is the axial duct. So radial flow cooling, the air is inlet through the air gap both ends, and air will there is guide so that air goes through some ducts and come out through some ducts. So air will flow, there will be cooler and fans. Similarly, that air also cools the rotor through this radial duct. There are axial fans also on the shaft. So difficulty with radial cooling is that the air gap of the machine is very small, and it is sometimes very difficult to circulate sufficient quantity of air to cool the machine. Now there can be a that figure I do not have for circumferential ventilation system. Basically, instead of uh, there will be hole in the circumference, that is the frame, through which the cooling air is let in, and there will be a hole on the diametrical opposite point through which it will go out the hot air. But this some air should be let into the air gap also to cool the rotor. So and for axial cooling system, this is the radial cooling. There is radial duct in radial system. Main disadvantage is that actually that heat, say the air is going through this duct, the heat has to be conducted from this slot or the teeth to this duct, this in this direction. But the conductivity in this transverse direction and in this direction, radial direction, is not same. It is in this direction, particularly from the slots, there will be the insulation, which is bad conductor, so that conduction of heat through the duct is not very good. So we got that in the core portion, normally axial ducts are also created. So air will pass through the axial ducts, and that will axial ducts will go like this parallel to the shaft. So air will pass through these axial ducts and will take out the heat. That is, say for this system, this is a complex. This one is radial duct is there. There are different cooling compartments. This is stator radial duct. This is air. There are there are coolers. This is a combined system. So axial ducts are also there to cool the machine. Now, next is that what should be the quality of the cooling air. Now, for large machine, this cooling system is normally always totally enclosed. Air is let into the system through some inlet, and it is thrown out from some other outlet. But the quantity of air is huge required to cool the machine. So though even if it is sufficiently clean, there will be huge amount of suspended material and dusts which might get deposited in the ducts. And when these impurities get deposited in the ducts, that will clog the ducts, and that will hamper cooling. So the cooling air should be properly clean. So normally cooling air, before entering the cooling system, it is uh, thoroughly cleaned with water spray, The advantage is that that also lowered the temperature of the inlet air, and that increases the efficiency of the cooling system. Though the air becomes to some extent damp because it will humidity will increase because of the water spraying, but it has been seen that the specific heat of dry air and moist air does not vary too much. So air which is let into the cooling system should be dust free and clean, otherwise the law this duct will be, particularly that horizontal ducts or the axial ducts, will get clogged. Now for very large machine it is very difficult to cool the machine with cooling air, because the air quantity required will be too large. There hydrogen is used for as a coolant, that is it should be a totally enclosed system, there should be no leakage, but instead of air hydrogen is circulated to cool the system. Now the advantage of using hydrogen as a cooling medium is that the hydrogen, the thermal conductivity is 7 times that of air, but its density is, we know it is light, density is 0.07 time that of air. The specific heat is 14 times, and its heat transfer is about 1.5 times that of air. Now the heat capacity, that is how much of heat a certain quantity of fluid can ability of the gas is the fluid can absorb, that depends on the specific heat and the density. Now the specific heat of hydrogen is 7 times and density is 0.007 times. The specific heat in the density, that is approximately 0.98, that is almost equal to 1. So the heat capacity of air and hydrogen is almost same, but the main advantage of hydrogen is that as being light, the windage loss of the machine will reduce manifold. It will be only 7 to 8% of the windage loss when the air is used as coolant. So not only windage was reduced, we will have a lots of fan to circulate the coolant, and as the hydrogen is light, this cooling that fan ratings, these coolers will have fans, these fan ratings will be reduced, so power consumption of the cooling system will also reduce to large extent. So hydrogen is widely used. The only main disadvantage is that we know hydrogen oxygen mixture is explosive, so certain precautions has to be taken, but actually the hydrogen oxygen mixture explosion only takes place when that for at a particular proportion. So normally it is kept pure, almost 98% pure hydrogen is circulated. So if oxygen is not there with sufficient quantity, it cannot explode. But the same is that it should be totally leak proof. Normally the pressure inside the cooling system is kept high so that there is no air cannot keep into the system from outside, and there are indicators which will indicate what is the oxygen content of the coolant inside. A main thing is that we are entering the coolant through this into this air gap. Now the total system is enclosed, but the shaft should come out. So when the shaft is coming out from the through this, so it is difficult to seal here. So normally gas seal, it has to be sealed properly with liquid oil sealed glands, so that there is no leakage of coolant from this point. Another thing, when you go for the high voltage, you will see there is a phenomena called corona. Now, corona effect will be there. Whether it is a, I am not going into details. What is corona? You will study it in high voltage classes. So, but for these large machines at high voltages, there will be corona. So, whether it is air or hydrogen, the corona phenomena of corona is there, but the adverse effect of corona in case of hydrogen will is limited because there is no oxygen and nitrogen. So it is advantageous to have hydrogen as a cooling medium. So for large machines, we have hydrogen as a cooling medium. And another type of cooling is used for very large machines, that is direct water cooling. That is, in those machines, the armature conductor itself will be hollow, hollow tubes, copper tubes, and through these hollow tubes, water is circulated. And so the winding is cooled very properly. So this direct water cooling is used for very large rating machines, but obviously the water should be pure, because if there is impurity, water become conducting, but pure distilled water is non-conducting. So the quality of water is very important, and that is a for outside cooling. Obviously we should have a coolant, but the additionally we can have the direct water cooling. So this is in nutshell that very basic of a construction. From here, you can just understand that the construction is quite complicated, which is not possible to, and a large part of it is basically mechanical. We are because in the power plant, if 50% is electrical, 50% is mechanical involvement. So it is not possible to have those details in, and I am not expert on all those subjects also to go into those details, but in general this is in nutshell the basic construction of basic construction of a synchronous machine. If so we will go to the theory. This is a picture for this hydrogen cooling. Now we will go to machine theory. Now before going into the proper synchronous machine theory, we should go define the what is a distributed binding. Now we have seen how the voltage is generated in a synchronous machine. We will have slots on the stator. In slots we will have winding, the armature winding, and on the rotor we will have the field winding. That this is just a schematic representation. That is, these are the stator slots, and in stator slot we have put some conductors, some 12 conductors, and this is the rotor, and this is the rotor winding. Now according to this figure, this is the north pole and this is the south pole. Now is for this particular now, for depending on the position of this field, EMFs will be induced in all those coil, all those windings. Now for this, if we make a coil with this conductor 1 and conductor 7, this EMF will be maximum when we know, for this particular figure, this flux linkage of these conductors are maximum, because north pole is here and south pole is here. But no, we know the EMF is maximum when rate of change of flux linkage is maximum, and at this peak point rate of change is actually zero, so the EMF is zero. But when the field because this field axis and this is the armature axis. These are 90 degree. Now this when the field axis and armature axis are coincident, it will have a maximum EMF. Similarly, for this, if we make a coil with conductor 2 and conductor 8, when the axis of this field is rotating, so when the axis the axis of this coil is along this line, say, when the axis of this coil and the axis of the field is coincident, this will have a maximum EMF. Similarly, whenever the field axis coincide with the axis of the any particular coil, the EMF will be maximum. So if we represent, say that EMF in this conductor E1 is by the conductors, EMFs in these conductors by E1, E2, E3, E4 in this way, then we can represent it by these EMFs, this phasor in this, so that, say, for this particular figure, the this when this axis of this coil and the field axis is coincident, EMF will be maximum E1. Now say that when the axis is along at any particular, but as the rotor rotates for other points, the EMF is varying. So the EMF induced in these conductors are alternating in nature. But what is the instantaneous value? Now the instantaneous value for any particular winding is will be given by the projection of the EMF phasor along the field axis for that particular instance. See whether it is true or not. Now this particular figure, our field axis is this one, north and south. So that EMF when and this that sorry আমি করার সময় একটা explanation ভুল দিয়েছিলাম. Actually your field flux linkage is maximum when the field armature field and the field axis and the armature axis and the field axis in coincident, and the EMF is maximum when they are 90 degree. So when the field linkage is maximum, then d phi dt is 0, so that EMF is 0. But when the linkage is minimum, the rate of change d phi dt is maximum, so EMF is maximum. So for this particular figure, your field axis is along this line and armature axis is along this line. So linkage is minimum, but the EMF is maximum in these two coils. So at this particular instant, what is the projection of E1 along the field axis? This is E1 and this is E7. So this is the EMF which is induced in these coils. And say for this coil, this one, these conductors 4 and 7, for this the field axis and the coil axis are coincident. So flux linkage is maximum, but the EMFs are 0. So what is the EMF according to this figure? The projection of this along the field axis, this is 0, both for 4 and for conductor 10. And that is also true for all other conductors. So for this conductor, EMF will be maximum when north comes here. So projection of E1, E2 along the field axis will be maximum. So these EMF phasors will represent the EMFs in these particular conductors. Now, this E1, E2, these are all RMS values, but I have drawn. And as if we consider that number of turns in these slots are same, so their magnitudes are also equal. So this EMF, if we join in the draw in this form, so if, from here you can see that the summation is 0. The placements are symmetrical, so summation of this EMF is 0. So if we draw like this, that is E1, E2, then E3, E4, as the summation is 0, so it will make a closed polygon. Because you know from vector addition that if we draw that E1, then E2, then from here to here will be the resultant. So if we draw from tip of E2, E3 and go on up to E12, so summation is 0. So it will make a closed polygon, and as the values are equal, so it will lie on a circle. Now, next is that how to make the winding. Now, in this figure, I have shown 12 conductors. Now, if we want to make three-phase winding, for one possibility that we can make three windings like with 1, 2, 7 and 8, 3, 4, 9 and 10, 5, 6, 11 and 12. This will make three windings with so what will be the these are the positions, that is if this is the flux, so according to that figure, the E1 as a what as maximum flux position condition, E7 was a maximum negative, so this was E2 and this is E8. The angle depends between what is this angle between these two subsequent slots. Now when we are connecting like this, so we will connect like this and this will be a winding. Now see that E1 and E2, if they are positive, they are negative. This E7 and E8 are negative, but within this coil E1 and E7 are getting added. Similarly, E2 and E8 are getting added. These are 180 degree. So, but there is a phase shift between this E1 and go to previous figure. There is a phase shift between E1 and E2. This angle normally expressed as gamma. This is called the slot pitch angle. So what is the total EMF available? E1 plus E7, E2 plus E8, but there is an angle gamma. So this should be a phasor addition. So E1 plus E7, E2 plus E8. So this will be the resultant. Okay. Now, so as these EMFs lie on a circle, so if this is the center of the circle, if we connect this and this is a perpendicular on this resultant, this is a perpendicular here. So as these EMFs lie on the circle, so we know if we connect at the center, it's sustain the same angle, that is gamma. So this angle is gamma, this is also gamma. So here is AE, this angle is gamma by 2. Okay, so this will be OA sine of gamma by 2. AE equal to OA sine of gamma by 2. So this AB is twice of AE. So AB is equal to BC is equal to twice AE is equal to twice OA sine of gamma by 2. Now if Q is the number of slots per pole per phase, now here this Q is 2. I have taken 2 slots per pole per phase to make a winding, because what I have drawn, this is a 2-pole winding. So arithmetic sum of the coil EMF is equal to Q into EMF per coil. So Q into twice say sine of gamma by 2. Now the resultant EMF, resultant EMF is this one. So what is the resultant? Resultant, now this total angle is twice gamma here. So it is AD is OA sine of gamma. So this will be twice OA sine of gamma. Now here it is gamma because I have taken Q is equal to 2, but normally in general it will be Q gamma by 2. Okay. So the result, we define the factor, distribution factor or the braid factor, as phasor sum of coil EMFs by arithmetic sum of coil EMFs. That is, if distribution was not there, the coil EMF available should be this value. But because of the distribution, what we are getting is this value. So the ratio of these two is called the distribution factor. This is KT1, distribution factor for the fundamental, because what I have drawn is for the fundamental flux wave. So this will be sine gamma sine Q gamma by 2 by Q sine gamma by 2. Now Q gamma is called the phase spread, because Q is the number of slots per pole per phase, and so gamma is the slot pitch angle. So Q gamma is the phase spread. So if we express it by sigma, as gamma is now as gamma is very small, so sine gamma by 2 when gamma is expressed in radian is approximately equal to gamma by 2. So substituting sine gamma by 2 to gamma by 2, this expression becomes sine sigma by 2 by sigma by 2. Now this is for the fundamental. Now what happens? We know that there will be some harmonics. Now what happens? Say let us consider the third harmonic. You can see that why this is 180 degrees. So any particular angle which is 180 degree for fundamental is equal to 3 into 180 degree for fundamental. So it will be n into 180 degree for nth harmonic. So any angle which is gamma is the slot pitch angle for the fundamental. So it will be effectively n gamma for the nth harmonic. So the distribution factor for the nth harmonic will be sine Q n gamma by 2 by Q sine n gamma by 2, which is approximately sine n sigma by 2 by n sigma by 2. Now, what is the advantage of distribution factor? First of all, when we are placing the winding on the stator slot, we have to go for distributed winding, because otherwise placing the large number of windings in particular slot as a concentric winding, that will make the stator bore very large, and that is impractical. So we cannot use the total iron of the stator air gap iron periphery. So we have to distribute the winding from practical purposes. Now see what is the advantage and disadvantage of distributing. The one only disadvantage we can see that if we have not distributed the winding, the magnitude of the EMF should be slightly more, because if you see that we calculate, you see KD1 value is less than 1, but it is almost equal to 1. But there are certain advantage of distributing. The advantage of distributing is that any value of KD for higher value of harmonics. Now for the harmonics, actually as the uh, waves are symmetrical, so no even harmonics are there, only odd harmonics are there. And among the odd harmonics, third and multiple of third or triplet frequency harmonics, that is taken care of by the star delta connection itself. So we are not interested in that. What we are interested in fifth, seventh, then 11th, and so on. Fifth and seventh is the most important because magnitudes will be larger. As we go for higher orders, the magnitude decreases. Now, the these factors, distribution factor for higher harmonics, the magnitudes go on decreasing. That is, it will be less for fifth, lesser for seventh, and so on. So the fifth harmonic voltage is multiplied by a very small factor, seventh harmonic voltage by a smaller factor, and so on. So whatever be the content of uh, harmonic in the flux wave, because flux wave there will be harmonic, so whatever be the percentage of harmonic in the flux wave, the corresponding percentage of the harmonic in the EMF wave will be quite less because of the distribution factor. So distributing the winding gives makes the EMF wave more sinusoidal. Then it makes the winding more mechanically strong also, because putting all the conductors in particular slot, the mechanical strength will not be there, but we are distributing, so it will be more mechanically strong also. So distributing a winding have certain many advantages. Now next is the pitch factor. Now what I have shown earlier is a, here this one is a full pitch winding for which we have derived the distribution factor. Full pitch means the two coil sides are 180 electrical degrees 180 electrical degrees apart. Now instead of connecting 7, we can connect 6 also with 1, that is 1 and 6, 2 and 7. This way also we can connect. Now what is the disadvantage? That 6 is not at the flux peak, it is slightly gamma degree before that. So these two EMFs are still adding, but it is not arithmetic addition because they have an angle between these two. E1 and E6 has an angle. So now what was the resultant was E1 plus E7 is slightly less. This is E1 and E6 is the vector summation. So if the this angle is gamma here, the angle, because we have short pitch by one slot pitch. So if this angle is gamma, this angle is gamma. So in this figure, this will be gamma by 2, this will be gamma by 2. So from here, we can see this is a figure. We can see that the ratio of the resultant voltage of short pitch coil, that is this one, and the resultant voltage of full pitch coil, which we have derived earlier, that will be cos gamma, cos, here I have shown this as epsilon, so cos epsilon by 2. Now in general, what for this figure, this short pitching is by an angle gamma, or the slot pitch angle. Now in general, we term it as epsilon, and you can, it is obvious that we can short pitch a coil by one slot pitch or two slot pitch, so epsilon should be a multiple of gamma. It cannot be half slot pitch. We have to short pitch by one slot pitch minimum. So what is the advantage? Now if we have a short pitch distributed winding, now it will have a winding factor KDN into KPN in general, for fundamental and for the higher harmonics. Now here also, what is the advantage of this pitch factor? That is short pitching a winding, resultant EMF from a short pitch and full pitch coils, resultant EMF of a short pitch coil is slightly less. But again, like the distribution factor, this pitch factor, this value go on decreasing as the order of harmonic increases. So this winding factor, which is a multiple of this, For higher harmonics, this will be very small. For the fundamental, it is almost equal to 1. So again, if we have a short pitch distributed winding, then the EMF will be almost sinusoidal in nature. There will be harmonics in the flux wave, but due to distribution factor and the slot pitch factor, the harmonics in the EMF wave will be negligible. So normally we can consider it to be sinusoidal in nature. Another advantage of short pitching is that it reduces copper overhang. What is copper overhang? If we go to the construction, those to a construction, this is the active length of the conductor within the iron, but this is end connection of the winding. When you are making the connection from this conductor to this uh, this is this copper portion, this is outside the iron, armature iron. So these are the overhang portion. So if we have a short pitch coil, then copper overhang reduces. So normally for large machines, we will have distributed winding and normally short pitch winding. It is universally used. Short pitch distributed winding is used. So I stop today here. We will go for MMF distribution for next class.